Welcome to Smalltalk Daily for Thursday, July 8th, 2010. This morning we're going to look at abstract classes, by which I mean a class that you're not really expected to create an instance of. Now, some abstract classes like object, you actually can create instances of. For instance, you can come down here and do object new. While this is not useful, it'll work. There are other abstract classes for which doing that just won't work. For instance, let's go here and take a look at arithmetic value, which is the top level of the numeric hierarchy, well, just under magnitude, but the top of things like number, fixed point, fraction, integer, and so on, all the things that are numbers. And if I tried to create one of those, arithmetic value new, you'll see that this is going to fail. And in failing, it'll show you something interesting. It says, this message is not appropriate for this object. You wonder, well, why do I get that? Well, I'll hit debug, and I'll go down here to the line in new, and you see this should not implement. It says numbers should only be created through arithmetic operations. So it turns out that if you want to have a subclass and there's behavior you're inheriting, and the top of this little section in this workspace talks about inheritance. If you've inherited behavior that's not appropriate for your object and you don't want it used, this is how you signal it. And this is both documentation to follow-on developers and a way of raising an exception if those follow-on developers don't read the documentation, don't look at the code carefully, but try to do the thing that you're not wanting them to do. So you just put in this method and then everything will work out for you because that code will not be able to execute. So we go over here to the class side, look at instance creation, new and new colon. Notice it says should not implement. Now there's nothing to stop the developer from trying to work around this problem if they really need to. It is Smalltalk after all. But this is a signal that this is a bad idea and you shouldn't try to do it. Now it turns out that there's another concept that's somewhat similar, and that's what if you've inherited something and you've set up a basic API in an abstract class, but in that abstract class there are API points that are not appropriate to implement in the top level. For instance, maybe you have something like abstract bank balance, or abstract bank account rather, and you want to have something like balance. Now in your abstract class you have no idea how to calculate the balance. Maybe it's a savings account, maybe it's a checking account, maybe it's a money market, whatever it is. It's only appropriate to calculate balance in one of those subclasses. So you need some kind of should implement thing. Well, it turns out that there is something like that called subclass responsibility. And the easiest way for us to find that is let's go browse the implementers of subclass responsibility. And we'll go in there and we'll find that it's implemented an object, and that just tells you that if you've attempted to call a method that's not implemented, it'll go ahead and raise the same kind of exception. But let's now go and do senders of, which is the more interesting part, subclass responsibility. And you'll see down here, it takes a little longer to do that query. There's a whole bunch of them. So you have here in the binary object storage in the boss system, it's showing you that in subclasses you need to implement this bits per index. If you come down here to workspace, you find, well, you have to do this on label to open up a new workbook. If you go down to action button view, you find out there's whole things here you have to do. In arithmetic value, notice that this is the more obvious one. Any subclass needs to know how to do multiplication, division, addition. So it turns out that while arithmetic value is specifying an API that says, look, any numeric type thing should know how to do these operations, I don't know how to do them here because it might vary for optimization reasons between floating points and fractions and small integers and so on. So I'm going to leave it to each subclass to implement that. And I'm going to leave a signal in the code that says, here you go. If you attempt to create a subclass and forget this method, as soon as somebody tries it, boom, it's going to blow up and just not work. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today in terms of looking at how you deal with subclassing when you want to disallow some kind of API from being called, or you want to force an API to be implemented. So until next time, have fun with Smalltalk.